This pile of dirt over here at the bottom of our compost pile, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. There's something in here. Where's my husband? Honey, come over here. There's something in our compost pile. Hey folks, if we haven't met before, my name is Tara. I garden in Northern California, and it has taken me at least 3 years, maybe more, of diligently applying compost twice a year to my soil and other organic material to get my garden to the stage where it's actually starting to become really productive. And if you ask any gardener, they will tell you the number one thing that you can do for the success of your garden is to make your own homemade compost. So today I am actually really excited to set up a brand new compost bin from Vego Garden that I think is actually going to solve a lot of the struggles that I've been having with composting so far. I mean, nothing's going to ever stop me from composting. It is so important for my garden, but I have to say it's not been fun, especially lately. And I'll show you why in just a moment. Now, this whole composting process can be very confusing, and this is especially true for beginners. I mean, a simple search on the internet can yield you hundreds of variations and techniques to do composting. And then, of course, there are all the questions that you might have. Can you even compost in your backyard? Is it going to be too difficult? Is it going to take forever? Is it going to be too messy to deal with? And then, of course, there's the critters issue that you may have to deal with. I mean, I know, but some people who actually live in bear country, composting is not even an option for them unless they've got some real bear-tight facilities. And then there's the other extreme. Do I need a lot of space to compost? Is my backyard too small? I mean, big garden, small garden, no problem. You can even compost in a tote. I'm always just a little bit nervous to open these things. I usually cover them up with a double layer here because I want to keep my worms nice and cozy, but who knows what I find in it. Whew, nothing. Okay, good. Are my worms okay? I'm just so scared of my compost pile, and let me show you the other one. You'll see why. From the amount of leaves on the top over here, I can tell that there has been some critter that has been digging around here, because when I put this down, it was nice and clean and free of leaves. Not anymore. And then if you look down here, yep, you can see some digging has been happening. There's been critters in here, and I'm a little bit nervous now to open it because I'm afraid that something will jump out at me. There was a rat in there. Ooh. Yep, that's one sure way to kill your composting enthusiasm real quick. And in addition to that, there's just the ickiness and messiness factor of it all. I mean, every garden's love to have at least one messy spot, right? Okay, two. All right, maybe three. I mean, my sheds are just overflowing with junk. I just need to get around to it. But yeah, back to composting. In addition to the messiness of it all, I just had unorganized piles of yard waste all over the place, half-filled bins, and I have like 12 compost bins. And if I were to find which compost bin actually had finished compost in it, it was a game of hide and seek, and I usually lost. Well, no more, because today I am setting up a brand new compost bin that Vego Garden sent to me, which is going to solve a lot of the compost issues that I've been having. And I'm a pretty experienced composter. I've been doing it for at least 5 years now, very, very carefully and sincerely. So I'm going to share with you some of my very best composting tips as well. And I'm also going to do some updates on some of the elevated planters from Vego Garden that I set up. They're doing really well. So I'll put that as well at the end of this video, because you guys have asked me to show updates and progress on any of the products that I'm recommending. And that's what I plan to do. First, let's take a look at some of my compost bin setups, because rats are not my only issue. This compost bin here, the one with the rats in it, it's what's called a biostack. They don't make these anymore, but the concept actually is pretty neat. You've got tiers that stack one on top of the other, so technically you can go as high as you want. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to kind of show you from far, but you can see how these tiers, they're just not well made. They kind of split apart with the pressure of the compost. There are these round compost bins. I actually prefer the round shape. It feels more natural, but you can see splitting apart at the seams over here, and clearly there's been critter activity over here as well. Don't leave that one alone. These two compost bins, I'm not even using them for compost anymore. I'm using them to stack some plastic pots. But you see the doors at the bottom? That's where you're supposed to scoop out the compost from. The doors just keep falling apart each time I try to open them. A couple of other popular systems. There's the tumbler system. Now, I've used that in the past. Basically, you stuff it with your yard clippings and food scraps and whatever, and then you fill it up to the brim and you turn it regularly, and then in about maybe 3 to 6 months it turns into compost. But it's just such a pain to load and to unload, and then keeping the moisture level, worms cannot get in, it's just a whole host of problems. I got rid of mine. Another system that I've seen a lot of people use, I haven't personally tried it, but it's the 3 compartment system, let's call it that, or the 3 bin system. This is where you've got your leaves filling up in one, your yard waste filling up in one section, and then once that is full, you start filling up in the next section, and then the first one you turn into the empty one, and so you kind of get that all mixed up, and basically you've got compost forming in various stages, let's call it that. And so you're filling up the empty compartments and letting the ones that are full kind of sit until they're ready to be used. I've not really used that, but that's actually a pretty good way. I'm just not into turning compost, just not my thing. And many of these bins have aeration issues. So if you're not on top of mixing your compost regularly, stirring it, and getting all the way down to the bottom, if it gets a little too wet, the bottom of it can turn into an anaerobic mess. I also had no real good system for yard prunings. I'd put them into any compost bin that was nearest to me, which didn't really work because I was never finishing any compost bin properly. And then when I really needed to harvest some compost, they were all kind of half done. And then leaves. Leaves was another issue because I get tons of leaves. I've got oak trees all over my property. And where do I store those? So all of these things are things that I have to deal with in my garden, and I'm sure that you'd probably have some of the issues as well. All right, let's go set up my new compost bin from Vego Garden, and I think I'm going to love it. So here is my big box with my compost bin in it. It is really heavy. Really heavy. So you're going to need 2 people to move this thing, which also means that once it is assembled, you're going to need 2 people to move it around if you need to move it in place. So I'm actually going to be putting all of the pieces down here, which I always do. I always check to make sure I've got all the parts. I'm going to lay it all here as close as possible to its final destination, and then we'll just have a little bit to move it over there if we build it right here. I've got all of my parts laid out, and you want to put something on the base of this. You don't want to scratch this lovely finish by putting it on top of rocks and stones. So I've got this old trampoline top that I'm using as my base, and I've checked off all the parts. Everything's there. I don't think I've ever had a problem with Vego Garden sending me anything that had missing parts. So anyway, you want to double check, and now we're ready to get set up. And you definitely want to read the manual. They take a lot of care over their manuals. It is really easy to read, and every single detail is laid out, even mistakes that you can commonly make. And it's very well done. So make sure that you take the trouble to read the manual. Otherwise, you'll just end up needing to redo certain things. So I'm not one to read manuals, but I will in this case. I actually have another planter that I just built, also the same color, same material, so I'm kind of familiar with how to do it, but this has got some slightly different things, so read the manual for sure. So while we set this up, let's quickly go over some of the key features of this composter. First off, it's made of galvanized steel with a powder coating that resists rusting, so you can really expect to have it pretty much forever, at least 20 years. The double walls really help with the sturdiness of the planter and also help keep the temperature fairly consistent along the edges so that the outer parts of the compost heap do not dry out too quickly. Here I am setting up the door at the bottom of the composter. I love how all the edges are so super smooth, so I don't even have to wear gloves. I don't scratch myself. And use an electric screwdriver to work with. It's just so much easier, especially if the holes are slightly misaligned. All right, let's finish this up and then we will move it to its final destination. Everything fit so nicely and so easily together. It was really a breeze to set it up. Yeah, you will need a mallet to hammer in those corners and then get some help to move it to its final destination. Now we're placing this over hardware cloth because I do not want any critters digging in from underneath like in the other compost bins. That's my husband. He is always quality checking my work and second guessing it. He is such a perfectionist, but I appreciate him. We're installing the lid now, and it's got these bumpers that prevent it from closing completely shut, which helps with aeration as well as prevents you from jamming your fingers. And it's got this nice hinge door that closes with gas springs. Super cool. And these perforated pipes really help with top to bottom aeration, which is so important to prevent the pile from going anaerobic, especially at the bottom. The bottom door slides right in. That's where you're going to be harvesting your finished compost from, and there are little latches to hold it in place. Now let's stick that logo on, a symbol of quality, Vego Garden. And we are done. Gosh, we're feeling accomplished. All right, all set up and it's looking really nice. Now I want to be layering browns and greens in this compost bin, and I do not have sufficient browns collected. I'm going to have to go on a scavenger hunt. But while I was thinking about it, I actually saw this. So the box in which the composter comes is fully compostable. Look here, they actually say it right here. This box is fully compostable, whether you recycle this box or repurpose it. Thanks for giving it another life. So that is what I decided to do. I'm curious though, what are your thoughts around reusing boxes like this? I've heard diverse opinions about the gums and glues and things that are used in the manufacturing of this material, and some people like using it, some people don't. So curious about your thoughts. Leave it in the comments below. I pinched all the pieces and I have made pretty much everything into straps that I've created this first layer with. So that's going to be my initial brown layer. And then I've put a layer of shredded wood chips on top of it, and it is really important to water down each layer as you build it, because once you fill it up, it's very difficult for the moisture to get down to the lower layers. So make sure that you water thoroughly. And one of the nice things about yard waste is that usually you've got a combination of browns and greens, just the way nature intended it to be. So you don't have to worry about ratios. Just take the whole thing and dump it in your compost bin. So here is what my setup is going to be looking like. I'm going to be using my new compost bin primarily to compost yard waste. I've got a bin set up right next to it, which is going to contain my browns. So things like cardboard, scraps. I'm going to be putting leaves in here. The purpose of having this bin full of brown material or carbon-rich material is that when I add greens to this, so things like fresh leaves, grass, maybe food scraps, etc., they do need to be mixed in with carbon in a ratio of roughly 1:3 or 1:4. So 1 part leaves, food scraps, and 1 part of carbon. And if you don't do that, a couple of things will happen. Number one, the green material tends to compact more together, and that will result in kind of an anaerobic mess. And then the second thing is, if you've especially got food scraps in here, they just become so much more attractive to critters. So covering it up with a layer of brown material will dampen the smell of whatever you've put in there, and so the critters won't be as interested in it. So you got to always have that right ratio of browns to greens in order for the composting process to proceed normally with less attractiveness to things like critters. Speaking of critters, this bin, the lid actually doesn't close completely, and this is by design. It is to promote airflow, and there are these bumpers right here. You can actually optionally remove if you do have a critter issue, or if you're not too worried about the airflow because you're doing things like yard waste that naturally has a lot of air pockets in it, then you can actually remove these bumpers. In fact, I think I'm going to be doing that because I do have a serious critter issue around here. Even though I think that they are not going to be able to scale these smooth walls, still things like fruit flies and stuff, I just want to keep out of my compost bin. And this lid, you guys, I really love how smoothly it opens and how smoothly it closes. Just such a contrast to something like this. You know, this rickety old lid comes off in my hand. It's supposed to stay intact over there. Just so difficult to close. Yeah, that is sophistication. Now remember to wet it down with each layer. We're building this like a lasagna, greens and browns, wetting down each layer as we go. And
This, folks, is my secret ingredient, dirt from my garden, full of microbial activity to jumpstart my compost. Wet it down again. The dirt also helps fill up some of those excess gaps, and I like to hit it down with my shovel as well.
Now I'm doing what's called a cold composting process, which means I am just going to be filling this up and letting it sit for about 6 months before it is ready to use. In fact, I'm going to keep filling it up over the next 6 months, and then hopefully at the end of 6 months, I will be able to start harvesting from the bottom. Now you can use the hot composting process, but for that you need to have this careful ratio of browns and greens, and then you need to turn it regularly, and the moisture, all of these factors really feature into a hot composting process. Too much effort and work for me, so I will be doing the cold composting process. And I figured that, it's August. If I start now, in 6 months, I'll have compost, which will be at the end of February, right in time for spring. And the cycle will keep repeating itself continuously from that point on, which means that I just keep filling up from the top and harvesting from the bottom, and I will have continuous compost. What a concept. Now, like I said, I'll be using this only for yard clippings, and one of the tips to make your compost grow a lot faster is to chop up your yard clippings, because those long branches just take that much longer to break down. So chop up those pieces and you'll get compost much faster. Now, you saw earlier how I did put some old soil in here. Now that actually contains a lot of life, a lot of microorganisms that are going to help jumpstart the composting process as well. And that's a really good way to sort of refresh your old soil, is keep coming and dumping it in your compost pile, and that will introduce new microorganisms as well as refresh the soil that you put in there. So to summarize, here are all the problems that this compost bin is solving for me. Number one, it's a solution to my yard waste issues. I like the long shape. It'll fit the yard waste a lot better, and there's no more unsightly piles lying all over my garden. It also holds a surprising amount of yard waste. Secondly, it has forced me to get a lot more organized about my composting. I'm going to have one place for all my yard waste. I'm going to have one place for my leaf mold. I'm going to put all my extra leaves in my 2 raised beds, so I'm composting in place. At least I've got a deliberate plan and strategy around those leaves. And all the extra leaves are going to be filled up in these bins right next to it, and I'm going to be filling up the compost bin with it. It's going to serve as my browns. And I love the fact that it's a continuous system, because once you get it all filled up and start harvesting from the bottom, as long as you diligently fill it from the top, you'll always have compost to harvest from the bottom. There's no need for multiple bins and multiple stages, no turning, no mixing, because guess what? There's also those aeration tubes in there that's going to prevent any anaerobic mess from forming. I still will go every once in a while and turn it a little, because I find that composting just happens so much faster when you give it a little turn once in a while. A twirl, not a turn, because I use a stake and twirl around rather than do the scoop, which is just so much harder on the back. And finally, and most importantly, no more rat issues. Now, I will be showing you the progress of this compost bin in future videos, so follow along. And by the way, I am a Vego Garden affiliate, so if you do choose to buy this compost bin or any other Vego Garden products, my affiliate link is in the description. I sure would appreciate it if you used it, and also if you use my code GREENLOVE10, you can get 10% off your entire purchase. Now let's go check on the progress of some of my other elevated raised beds, because they're doing pretty awesome. Let's first check on my modern raised bed. Now that looks very similar to the composter that I just set up. It's a similar style, and I set this one up on July 22nd. Today is August 26th, so it's been just about a month. So look at the before picture, which I'll put on the screen right now, and check out the after. Woohoo! Look at all my micro tomatoes. They are actually starting to produce. Isn't that adorable? These plants have covered up this entire bed. I cannot see anything. Underneath, I've got my roselle plants that are gone huge. They're going to start to flower any moment. My zinnias, I wish at least one of them had opened to show you, but we'll see that in a future video. And my cucumber plants. By the way, no squirrels have been able to cross the barrier that I made here, but my cucumbers are starting to produce. I saw a few, look at that, over there and over there. Oh my goodness, you guys, a month, and these cucumber plants have gone from little tiny seedlings into fully productive plants. This is so exciting. Okay, now I'm going to show you my Easy Cube planter that was set up on June 17th. Today's August 26th, so roughly 2 months. Let me show you the picture from June 17th. That's what it looked like. And look at it now. Whoa! It is huge. I mean, all these cantaloupe plants and cucumber plants growing all over the place. And my tomato plant, which I thought, by the way, was a dwarf tomato plant, turns out that it wasn't. It was a cutting from a Juliet tomato. These are beautiful red, kind of semi-cherry tomatoes. Very, very delicious. And it is growing, oh, past my roof. And I've also got tons of marigolds. I've got a Peruvian pepper that I can't wait for it to produce. I don't know why it's taking so long. I think it's just enjoying the nutrition that the soil in this planter has, as well as the 20-gallon self-watering feature, which you guys, I water this maybe once a week or so. In my hot California climate, that is unheard of. It is so convenient, and the plants are growing absolutely magnificently. And I've got one more planter to show you. This was set up, I think, about 3 months ago, and it's in transition. So it actually has gone through one cycle, and this is the second cycle that it's going through. I've got some cantaloupe plants growing here that are starting to produce. So cute. I've got a volunteer tomato that is just doing all kinds of stuff all over the place. I've got a new batch of beans coming along here, and I've got a new batch of tomato plants also. This one was getting much more sun than this one over here. They're both the same age, so you see how much difference the sun makes. But yeah, this planter, the thing I love most about this planter, in addition to the solid quality, is the fact that I can move it. You guys, this heavy planter, I can move without any problem at all. In fact, I have spun it around once because the plants at the back were getting shaded out. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite planters. And I've got it sitting next to the Costco planter, which is not doing so bad actually, but it does have a problem with the wheels. Look at those teeny tiny wheels next to those solid wheels. I mean, you can't move this thing. It will fall apart, and it's got a self-watering feature. It's got 6 gallons underneath. That thing, that bottom has fallen out on me before, so I do not dare to move this. That one, no problem at all. Now, I'll put a playlist link to all of my composting videos. I've got tons of them. And I'll also put a link to all the Vego Garden products that I have reviewed. Follow along, folks. I'm going to be posting videos on how I'm getting my fall garden going. Until next time, live green and love your greens.